Hey North Point, what an amazing month we have had celebrating Christmas Give Back. We've been at each of our campus communities throwing a holiday party for our neighbors. Overall, we got to serve just over 1,300 kids with not just one present, but something fun, something educational, something warm, and a stocking stuffer. There's things that I really love about Give Back season, and one of them is watching North Pointers going shopping, individuals making donations, business communities getting involved in donating to campus events. It also looked like individuals employing their community of influence and saying, be a part of this with me. One of the stories I loved is that there was a North Pointer named Terry who looked at a group of students and said, hey, let's be a part of this. And they showed up with an SUV full of toys for Give Back. And there's nothing better than when kids and teens and adults get to go shopping and then see it connected to the right person. And here's what that looks like in reality. When I get to go through these events with families, one of them came up to me and she said, I don't believe anything happens by chance, because today while I was shopping for my two girls, I got to pick out things that I would have gone to the store looking for. So when you activate and love your community so well, North Point, what it does is it provides really great experiences for families. Parents get to be the hero of the holidays. Their kids feel like their parents have heard them and listened to them. And a lot of that, it's the Christmas magic of making relationships and families grow. And so North Point, I'm so proud to be part of this community and to know that we loved our neighbors really well this Christmas season.
North Point, you're awesome. You are awesome. Hey, if we haven't met yet, my name is John. I help out as one of the pastors around here. But if you're newer around here, maybe you're attending with a family member or a friend, maybe you're watching online, you're just checking things out today. If you were to ask me, what's North Point all about? I think I'd just show you that video. That's what it, and a lot of times what people want to know is, okay, the church, what does that church believe? And what I think is more important than what they believe is what they do with what they believe. Because then that shows that they actually believe it, right? And so the way that you all take the love and the joy and the peace of Jesus and you bring that outside these four walls and that impacts a community is so amazing. That it's less about showing up to church and more about bringing church to our community. So cool. It truly inspires me. I remember it was over a decade ago. I started attending North Point. One of the first things I got invited to was a give back event, and I attended, and it changed the trajectory of my life, where it was less about what scripture do you know and how does that scripture impact you and treat people around you. And it started a path that I started going on in my life. And I got introduced to a lot of y'all. And the way that you all are so generous and so caring and so loving, and you do it in such a way with so much dignity, you ought to be proud of yourself. And you provided Christmas for so many kiddos this season. Thank you. And so I hope that you had a Merry Christmas. All right, this is the time of year I have to constantly remind my wife that puppies aren't Christmas presents, they're 15-year commitments, okay? And so I already know, I swear, one of you, if you come up here and you're like, I've got the perfect dog for you, I'll have security escort you out of here, okay? Because I'm like this close to caving, all right? But how many in here had a good Christmas? A good Christmas? Okay, how many of you in here are like, I'm kind of glad Christmas is over? I'm kind of glad. Okay, how many of you in here have already taken down your Christmas decorations? How many of you in here would have taken down all your Christmas decorations? You're just too lazy, but mentally you're there. Yeah. Hey, which, by the way, this isn't the week to do that. All right, this isn't the week to take it down. This is the week between Christmas and New Year. This is called Twixmas. This is the time of year where personally and professionally, no one expects nothing of you, all right? This is great, right? And no judgment. You can roll around in your house in the same, stained Chiefs sweatshirt or Snuggie, and you just roll around. Showering is optional. You don't even know what day it is. You barely eat. This is your time to lay on the couch and watch all the Netflix shows you missed, and you transform into a couch. You eat whatever you want. Your diet starts next week, all right? This isn't New Year's resolution time. That's future you, right? This is the time, you do you, boo, right? This is the time for that. And which, by the way, I'm kind of surprised anyone's here today. So I'm so proud of you. I thought I might be the only one, or at least the only one fully dressed. So I love that. I'm so proud of you. I think if you show up to church or you watch online today, like between Christmas and New Year, you just get extra Chick-fil-A in heaven. That's how that works, all right? But today, we're not in any kind of series, but we're talking about holiday hangover. And I think about my experience with the holidays, and I wonder if you have the same experience. I love Christmas. I love Christmas, okay? I start setting up for Christmas November 1st, all right? It's just like, that's when I start. And I'm so excited about Christmas, but I get in the Christmas season, and there's a part of me, no matter how much I love Christmas, I kind of just want to get past Christmas. I just kind of want to get through the holiday. I want to survive the holiday and make it through, which I think is a terrible way of looking at things, right? Like, there are seasons of our life where survival is fine, but I just don't think that's the way, like, where we should live. Like, but there are times in our life where maybe you lose a loved one, and things are emotional and they're hard, and like you go in certain rooms and it brings back memories, and like, yeah, you are just surviving, and that's okay. There are times financially where we just survive. We like gotta make it to the next paycheck, or we gotta make it through this season until we, build back up our reserves. That's fine. There are times in our career where we just survive. We know there's a lot of turbulence and there's gonna be a lot of stress, and this is gonna be a season we gotta work extra hard, but this won't be forever. It's a time you survive. That's okay. I think about our faith even. There are times where our faith starts out ideal, and then we have an ordeal, and then we feel like we got a raw deal, and we're like, give me a new deal, okay? Like, that sometimes happens, and we just survive. We survive our faith. I was thinking about yesterday, I was coming back from Kansas City, and I was driving, and I heard some weird noises in the back of my car, and so I looked back, and my daughter projectile vomits all over the car. Yeah, it was orange if you're picturing it. I'm just like, roll the windows down. Like, I'm just surviving that car. That is okay. There are times you just survive, but survival, like, that's not a great key to long-term success. Like, just surviving. And the things that help you cope in one season will ultimately cap your growth in the next. I truly believe we're made for more than just getting through, surviving, getting past our life. Because when you're old and wrinkly and you're on your deathbed, which I hope even for the oldest of us, that's still like decades away, all right? When you're old, what would future you, old you, tell you about the season that you're in right now? Do you think old you would be like, just get through this season with your kids, just get through this marriage, just get through this situation? Or do you think future old you would say, don't waste this moment? Because when we think about the most important things in our life, like, our goal is not survival. It's more than that. Like, when we think about our kids, our goal when we have young kids, toddlers, or kids in elementary, like, I get it. Things are hard. Sometimes Miss Rachel does the parenting for us, and we turn on a screen. I get it. But our goal is not survival. Our goal is, how do we make memories together? How do we be present? This is such an amazing time in their life where they're building a foundation of love, a foundation of trust. Like, they're building a faith foundation. This is the only time I can teach my son every poop joke I know, and he thinks it's funny. Okay, I was like, you gotta milk these moments. Don't waste them. This isn't a time to survive. This is a time for more than that. Like, when you think about your marriage, like, you don't want to just survive your marriage. I get it, okay? Occasionally your spouse is the most annoying human being on the planet. Yes, okay? All the married people say amen. For sure. And sometimes you feel more like roommates than soulmates. But you don't want to survive. Like, this isn't a prison sentence. I don't want 75 to life. I want 75 amazing years of marriage. Or like at least 75 years of marriage, and most of them are amazing, okay? Like, that's what I want. I want to make like memories together. I want this to be special. I want to push each other where we're better together than we would be alone. I want to be that old couple taking hits off each other's oxygen tanks. That's the goal, right? That's what we're striving for. This is like, it's not survival. It's more than that. We think about our career. I get it. Some days are hard, and you just, you check in for the paycheck. But your motto shouldn't be work sucks and then you die. Like, there is more to life than that. Like, you only get one shot at this. Like, make the most of it. Bring the best attitude. Let's be like I want to be a part of something special in my career. You do too. We want to do something that's bigger than us, that impacts more people than just us. I think when it comes to our faith, it's the same thing. Like, your faith is too important to just survive and get through and get past. I truly believe that God has something more for you. And how do we tap into his power so that our life has some sort of power in it? And I think so many times we're more concerned with charging our phones than charging our lives. And so today, I want to walk through some of this. And my message today isn't how to go from surviving to thriving in 2025. If it was, I'd write a blog. I'd charge everybody $19.99. Okay, like that's not what we're doing today. Which, I look like I'm 17. You wouldn't buy it anyway. All right, but today, I just truly believe that God's given you some gifts and some abilities and some passions. And I think he wants to reveal something like a vision to you of what the future could look like for you today. And so I got a question for you. My question is this, is that in your life, do you live by default or do you live by design? So in your life, think about it. In your life, do you live by default or do you live by design? Which default? Default is I take the things that come my way and are thrown my way, and I accept that. I don't go out looking for too many things. I just get through. I get past whatever drifts toward me, and that's what I deal with, and that's what I do. Or do you live by design? Do you say I actively seek out the things that bring me life? I constantly audit my life for things that own me, and I try to do something about it. When obstacles come my way, I don't see them as in the way. I see them as the way, right? There's like an ownership to your life and the things you're doing. And I think no matter how you live, each of us have a mental picture of what our life could and should look like. The question is, do you take steps toward that and live that, or do you let it come to you? We all have a mental picture of what our marriage could and should look like. We've got a mental picture of what our finances could and should look like. We've got a mental picture of how I want my kids, how they could and should look like. How I want my health, how that could and should look like. How my faith could and should look like. The problem is you will never drift toward how your life could look like. You have to take steps toward it. And I know I've set this up and it sounds like a motivational speech, okay? This isn't, all right? My goal today is not to replace God with you and you order your steps and plan your life. But today is, how do I become the best steward of all that God has given me? And there's a difference to that. And there's a responsibility that comes with that. And growing up, I'd always hear this verse because people would talk about a vision for your life. And so I always thought, okay, I just need to plan out my life. But I hear this verse in Proverbs. And it says, where there is no vision, the people will perish. And here's what that means. Okay, the Hebrew translation of this is, where there is no vision, the people will cast off restraints. Where there is no vision, people will settle for what's easiest. Where there is no vision, people will settle for instant gratification. Where there is no vision, people will take what comes to them and they'll go into survival mode. Where there is no vision, we live by default. And so I know some of you didn't grow up reading Proverbs. Maybe you grew up listening to Katy Perry. Okay, I always think about this song. It's like her lyrics, do you ever feel like a plastic bag floating in the wind wanting to start again? Because baby, you're a firework, all right? But sometimes we think that. That's the message version of that verse that I just read, okay? You think, why am I here? What am I doing? Where am I going? Do I matter? What is my purpose? Maybe you've asked yourself those questions. Maybe you've asked those questions recently. Well, today, I want to introduce you to a guy in Scripture. A guy in Scripture who has a comfortable life. He's got a cush job in an empire that's not his. But he receives word from back home that things aren't going too well. And he's got a decision to make. Do I stay where I'm at and I keep living the way I'm living? I got what I got. or do I go and I do something about it? And his name is Nehemiah. And so let me give you a little bit of backstory. All right, in 586 BC, there was an empire called Babylon. And Babylon conquered Jerusalem. And Jerusalem, they tore down its temple, they tore down its walls, they tore down the community. And the way that Babylon operated was Babylon, it operated with brute force. So Babylon would come in and it would destroy everything in its way, and that's how they conquered you. So they'd tear down everything you've ever built. They leave you in exile, and so that it will take you a long, long time to rebuild, so you can't ever overthrow them. And so this happened to Jerusalem. And 50,000 Jews were exiled in Babylon, which they had no place to go. They had no homeland, so they had to rebuild somewhere else. Well, a little bit later, there was another empire called Persia. And Persia conquered Babylon and acquired Jerusalem. And Persia ruled a little bit differently. So Persia wouldn't just like wipe out an entire city. Persia would rule like the Romans. So they would invoke their culture into things, and they would impose their will on you, but they would keep you running. So they wouldn't desolate a city. They would just force you to surrender to them and then say, hey, keep everything going, but give us all your resources. So Persia would become stronger. So they wouldn't wipe you out, but they would bleed you dry. And so Persia was ultimately like, hey, Jews, you can head back to Jerusalem and you can rebuild so that you can pay us in the process. And so because the city was desolate, all these Jews weren't like, yes, let's go back. They were like, well, we've already kind of built where we're at and there's nothing there, so why would we? So there was a guy named Zerubbabel. Which if you're having a kid in 2025, consider that name. Yeah, it's a good name, right? But Zerubbabel was a pioneer. He was one of the first leaders to lead a group of Jews back to Jerusalem, and he rebuilt the temple. He had a vision of that, and they did it. And then there's another guy, Ezra. And Ezra led the second wave of Jews back to Jerusalem, and he brought laws, he brought structure, he brought order to the things that are going on. He brought back religious practices. He knew the Torah very well. So he kind of built back the community. And then 141 years later, after these things had been destructed, there was a guy named Nehemiah. Nehemiah, who was a Jew, but he was a cupbearer to the king of Persia, Artaxerxes. And if you don't know what a cupbearer is someone who tastes the king's food before he eats it to make sure it's not poisoned. So, great job. Some downsides. But like if you didn't have a vision for your life, and food taster might be one. Okay, that was nice. But that's what he would do. And he has a lot of influence. He's got a lot of trust and loyalty with the king. To have a position like that is a big position. But he hears this news from back home that things aren't going too well. And here's what happens. It says this in Nehemiah. It says, they said to me, things are not going well for those who return to the province of Judah. They're in great trouble and disgrace. The wall of Jerusalem has been torn down, and the gates have been destroyed by fire. He says this, when I heard this, I sat down and I wept. In fact, for days I mourned, I fasted, and I prayed to the God of heaven. And so Nehemiah got this great position in this foreign land, gets some word back home that things aren't going too well, the things that Zerubbabel had built, the things that Ezra had put into motion, they're falling apart. And it breaks his heart. Which, by the way, he's not just like, man, I think every city should have a wall. That's just not fair. No, that wasn't what broke him up, okay? Like, he wasn't broken up about brick and mortar. He was broken up about the way that his God is perceived. Because that wall represents the strength of his God. And so he was like, this isn't right. And nations need to understand the God that we serve. And he said that wall reflects that. And so he was like mourning that when he was thinking about this, okay? And so one of the first things I wrote down about vision, I think is helpful for us when it comes to, what does a vision look like in my life? How do I start to develop a vision? I wrote it down this way, is that vision often begins with a broken heart. So vision often begins with a broken heart. A great vision starts with a great void. And there's no such thing as an emotionless vision, okay? It's when something is so personal that it affects you in a deep way. If something happens and it doesn't affect you, it's because you're disconnected from it. It's like it's not personal. It's not part of your story. There's some way that you don't connect with it. If something impacts you deep inside of you, it's because there's something personal that's there, right? And I've seen so many people do amazing things because of a broken heart. There are people who have started businesses because they're like, that ain't right. That the way that they're doing that isn't right, and someone needs to do it differently, and so they do. And inventors invent because of a broken heart. I've seen so many nonprofits started, even in this city right here. When I think about Dream Center or Pregnancy Care Center or Care to Learn or Crosslines, it started when something broke someone's heart in a community where they said, there's a people group that's being underserved. There's people that don't have access to food. There's people that don't have access to clothing. There's moms that don't have access to diapers. That is not right, and we need to do something about it. I've seen so many amazing things start from a broken heart. One of my favorite things is anytime we do a give back event, you saw the video, and we get everybody together, and it's like, hey, why did you serve at this give back event? There's usually someone that raises their hand, and they're like, well, because that was me 3 years ago. And I went through an event like this, and I remember it being so meaningful for me, and I wanted to be a part of the solution. I promised myself when I got to the other side, I would serve an event like this. Oh, my word, right? You're like, I feel that. Like, that is a vision that stemmed from a broken heart. I've seen people change their career trajectory because of a broken heart. Where I've got friends who speak at school assemblies about mental health because they struggle with mental health and they want to be a part of that solution. I've got friends that are part of the foster care program, part of the solution there because they were deeply affected by that when they were younger. What happens is a lot of times a vision starts with a broken heart. And I already know that there's some dude that's in here that's like, broken heart, I haven't cried in years, which... Well, I don't even think that's healthy. I think you should, okay? Like, clean out those tear ducts. But, okay, I think sometimes we process a broken heart differently. And sometimes a broken heart makes us sad, and sometimes a broken heart makes us mad. And oftentimes, maybe you don't feel sadness, but you feel anger because something is unjust that's going on. Well, yeah, that's a broken heart. And Nehemiah experienced the same thing. In fact, one of the things that's interesting is that not everything that breaks your heart is what you need to give your life to. And we know that. There's discretion with that. But how do you determine the two? I wrote it down this way. Is that God doesn't always bring the pain to you, but he's always waiting for us to bring the pain to him. God is not the author of every painful experience that you have in your life. At the same time, we have to take that pain we're experiencing and we bring it to him. I believe there can be a lot of significance to the pain that you're experiencing. At the same time, are you going to be able to see that significance if you do not bring that to him? It's important. And what did Nehemiah do? He took that to God. It says for days he mourned, he fasted, he prayed to the God of heaven. And I think about our lives when we experience pain. How many times have you experienced pain and instead of bringing it to God, you blame God? How many times have you been the author and the editor and the publisher of your pain and you didn't even invite God into that? How many husbands experience pain and you go right into fix-it mode? Fix it. I got a solution. Here we go. Why don't we try this? It's like God's like, do I get a say? I think so many times we're cool with handling our own pain and God's waiting for us to bring it to him to say, hey, how can we bring some significance from this? And so this is what Nehemiah did. He prayed. He fasted. And God said, okay, do something about it. And he's like, no, hold on. What? That's not how that works. Don't you hate it when you go from the prayer asker to the prayer answerer? You're like asking for, God, can someone do something about that? And he's like, okay, yeah, you. You're like, well, that wasn't what I was at. I just think someone should do something about that, right? But God's like, no, you, Nehemiah. And where there is pain, there begins to develop a plan. And so Nehemiah, he's mourning this, and he develops like what do I need to ask for? How can we do something about this? And so he ends up going in the presence of the king. And the king, by the way, you don't go into the presence of the king less than. Like he was visibly weeping. You go like your nicest dressed. You go looking your freshest and your best. Nehemiah went into the king and he had been audibly weeping. And so the king says, what's going on? And he says, well, walls have been torn down in my homeland. This represents my God. And the king says, how can I help? And so Nehemiah pipes up and he says this, if it pleases the king, and if you're pleased with me, your servant, send me to Judah to rebuild the city where my ancestors are buried. First off, he butters up the king. I love that. If you're pleased with me, okay, in my service. And then he makes his request. And that's a bold ask. Because this would be like you going to your boss and asking them to write you a reference letter for a competitor in your city. You're like, even if you give me a good reference, like this is hurting you because you're losing me and I'm actually going to another, business that's competing. Like that's a big ask to make. But here's what a vision does. And I wrote it down this way, is that not a vision often starts with a broken heart, but a vision moves you from someone should to I must. That's what vision does. Vision moves you from someone should do something about this. This isn't right. This is messed up to no longer can I ignore this anymore. Like I gotta do something about this. Like there is some ownership on the other side of that. There is with that revelation, there is responsibility. And it doesn't mean that I must do something right now, but it does, waiting time isn't wasted time, all right? And as a vision matures, so do you. But at the same time, there is a responsibility that comes with that. And so you discover something in your life that breaks your heart. God shows you something. You bring that to him. And he says, okay, you got to do something about it. That is all the fun part of a vision. That's all the cool part of a vision. That's the unique part about a vision. And then comes the hard part about a vision when God says, okay, you go. Do something about it. And it's scary and it's new. And there's not like a model that you're following. And so you don't know your next 5 steps, but you just know your next 1 step. And you don't know how that's going to end up. And you don't know how that's going to turn out. And you're like, well, what if this goes wrong? What if this happens? And it's scary. There's a lot of fear involved when God tells you to go. When there's something that you say, I must do something about this. It's like, oh, but now I guess I have to do something about this. And it's hard. I think about when the Golden Gate Bridge was constructed. Okay, when they were in the construction process, 28 workers fell to their death. And they got some bad press, as you might imagine. And they're like, we got to do something about this. And so what they did was they devised this plan to have a $130,000 net that goes underneath the Golden Gate Bridge as people are constructing it so that if people fall, they'll be caught and they'll be saved. So over the next course of a couple months, 10 people fell, 10 workers. They fell, they were completely fine, they were completely safe, and they continued on with their work. And so what happened though, after that happened, is that production skyrocketed. All of a sudden, they were able to go further and faster and accomplish more because they felt safe. No longer did they have this fear of falling. They were free to do their job. And when I think about a vision, that's scary because who knows what might happen. Like, I think about a vision that's big, that you're like, I don't know, but I just have a clear picture of what this could and should look like. I don't know how to accomplish it. I don't know if I even have the resources to accomplish it. I don't know what's next, but I guess I know what my next step might be. It is scary. But when this is a vision that you invite God into, guess what? You got a safety net. And this isn't a vision that you do alone. This is if you slip, you got someone, something that's got you. And so Nehemiah, he made that request to the king. And the king said, okay. He said, I'll give you what you need. So he got favor from the king. Then he got favor with resources. And things started coming his way. He's like, man, like when you think about rebuilding a wall, you're like, oh yeah, I need things to rebuild the wall with. You didn't just show up at the city. And so you got favor with the resources. You got favor. There's a group of people that were like, okay, we'll follow you. He cast that vision and they said, we'll go with you to rebuild this wall. It was awesome. But it was also hard. He had opposition. He had Jews that were in the city. They're like, I don't even think we should be rebuilding a wall. You know those people. Like, I don't even, like, why are we spending so much money on that? Right? Why are we doing that? There were people that opposed the wall so much that they were fighting the workers. So there's this famous picture of Nehemiah where he's got a brick and mortar in one hand and he's got a sword in the other, and he's fighting off people as he's building this wall because he's got this vision. There were even people from outside cities who were writing letters to the king of Persia, Artaxerxes, who he used to work for, who were saying Nehemiah's only rebuilding this wall because he wants to be king and he wants to overthrow Persia. But like, it's funny, you got one of these verses, okay? This is what a vision does. It brings you clarity on what you need to go and where you need to do, or what you need to do, where you need to go, and what's next for you. It says this, as Sanballat and Geshem sent this message to Nehemiah. They said, come and meet with us at Kephrim in the valley of Ono. Right? Let me pull you away from working on the wall. But Nehemiah says this, I knew they were scheming to hurt me. So I sent messengers back with this, I'm doing a great work, I can't come down. I want that to be our motto today. What if we had the type of vision where we're able to forego some things because we want to accomplish one thing? And we had the type of clear vision that we're like, no, I'm not going to let people in my way that have an opinion stop me from doing something I know God has designed me to do. He's in this process with me, and I'm doing it. I'm doing a great work. I can't come down. A lot of you, sometimes you're doing great things, and things get hard, and you're like, yeah, but I don't know. Maybe I wasn't the right person for this. No. You are. You struggle your way to success. That's the way it goes. Things are hard. You don't want to look back at your life and be like, well, I just survived. Let's do something great. We get to be a part of a vision that God has for our lives. I believe he has a vision for every one of us. Isn't that cool? This isn't like a have to. Like, I remember, my dad would tell me to go mow the lawn. I'd be like, do I have to? And he'd be like, no, son, you get to. And so like we get to. Isn't that cool? We get to be a part of a vision like this. So one of the things I wrote down is that vision brings the future into focus. Vision brings the future into focus. Nehemiah, he was successful. He rebuilt the wall. He brought some stability back to Jerusalem. And ultimately, this represented his God and how his God was seen to those around him. It ended up being a witness because there were many, many men before that tried to rebuild the wall, but he did it because of his vision that God had given him. And I think about, when's the last time that you opened yourself up to receive something from God that you feel like he's telling you to do in your life? When's the last time that you stopped surviving, getting through, getting past, and you said, God, what do you want me to do? There's this famous story of a professor who would go around and he'd speak at different places similar to this. There'd be hundreds of people there, and he'd ask some questions. And I want to ask them to you today, because I just want to see where we're at, okay? One of the questions he'd ask is, how many of you can sing? Like, how many of you are like, I'm a singer? How many of you can sing? A few? Okay, a couple people. Okay. How many of you can dance? How many of you are like, yeah, come on, dancer? Yep, I knew it. Oh, like 5? Okay, we're not a big dance community. All right, I gotta change that. How many of you can draw? You draw? Okay, yeah, a couple people, maybe some architects, maybe some artists. Cool. Here's what's crazy. If I went to Kid Point right now, and I went to the kids, to the elementary room, and I said, how many of you can sing? Guess what I'd see? Everybody. Me. Hold on. What do you want me to sing? Like, if I asked, how many of you can dance? They'd be like, they wouldn't even raise their hand. They'd just be like, let me show you my dance moves, okay? Which I wouldn't have raised my hand on the dancing thing. When I'd be like, how many of you can draw? Guess what? They'd be like, let me go grab the craft that I just did. Let me show you mine. Look at mine. When you were kids, you used to do all those things, and now you're old, and you can't even sing, and you can't even dance, and you can't even draw. What happened to you? Where did you go? I think a lot of times life lifes, and things get hard and we go into survival mode, and every day that we deny a dream that's inside of us, we die a little bit more inside. And all of a sudden, these possibilities of our life, they aren't something we can achieve. They're just distant memories in our head. And today, I'm asking you, what is God wanting you to rebuild this year that maybe you've given up on? And I don't think it has to be this grand thing that you've got a big plan on, but a clear vision of what's my next step. Maybe for you, God's asking you to rebuild this marriage that you've been in. You've been living by default and you've been in survival mode, and God's like, start today. What book do you need to pick up? What podcast can you listen to together? What open conversation can you have? Maybe you've got a vision for a relationship that needs to be mended. Like, what can you do today? What apology text do you need to send? What letter do you need to write? What is that like? I believe there's something for you today that you saw a clear picture of what this could be and should be, and all I know is this is my next step. What way is God asking you to be generous in your life, but you're in debt up to your eyeballs? And you're like, how am I supposed to, you just start. I don't know, develop a budget, start doing something there. What way in your faith is God telling you, I've got something for you that's bigger than you? How can you start to walk in that today? Maybe that's just saying, I'm gonna daily get some scripture in me. I'm gonna get a community around me that's helping me strive toward Jesus in that way. Whatever it is, you start small, and it makes a big impact on a vision tomorrow. When's the last time you dreamed? And when you do this, I wrote it down this way, is that doing God's work is not about what we'll get, but it's about what we'll become. This vision isn't about your success story. This vision isn't about how's that going to impact my bank account in a positive way. This vision isn't how does this make me look better. A lot of times a vision is going to be humbling. It's going to be hard. It's going to be stressful. It's going to stretch you. And that's great because you're going to love the person you become in the process. And when it comes to this next year, I don't know what you'll achieve externally, but I believe God's going to do something inside of you that is going to show to those around you. And my prayer is that we can lean in on that today, that we can lean in on a vision that God's given us, and we can take some steps toward that, because your life is about way more than just surviving and getting through. Let's tap into his power so our life has some power to impact those around us. Let me pray that we'd be able to do that. Lord, I'm so fascinated and interested in all the ways you're speaking to those that are here in this room, that are watching online. God, I pray you just burst something in them, that you'd reveal something that breaks their heart around our community. Something that when they experience that pain, they bring it to you and you say, you gotta do something about that. And as scary as it is, we start to take some steps in that. And it's small and it's difficult and there's some fear involved. But with your courage, you give us the boldness to be able to walk in that and do that. I just believe you're going to do a great work in us as we do your work. And it's going to impact a lot more people than us in the process. In your name, amen.